People don't understand that God didn't just flood the earth because the earth was full of evil, the end. Okay, when you read the book of Enoch and you read the book of Jubilees and Jasher and you read these other ancient texts, you get a more clear understanding of why God flooded the earth.
Hey folks, I've been seeing something on social media, especially TikTok, that I have to say it takes me sort of aback every time I see it, and I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it's people who seem to think that literature written in the Jewish tradition, let's say around the time of Christ or a little bit earlier, are actually historical sources for understanding what the Bible is trying to say. Now, that might sound a little bit abstract, but just 3 examples, and they're all referenced here in this video that I'm stitching. The first is the book of Yashar, which is a book that's mentioned probably just twice in the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Joshua, chapter 10, and also in 2 Samuel, chapter 1. And this is a book that doesn't exist. There is no book of Yashar that we can point to. Now, there was a forgery, an 18th century forgery, which maybe that's what this person is referring to. I don't know. But there is also a Jewish book, a medieval book around the 9th century and later, called the Sefer HaYashar, the Book of Yashar. And that is a creative medieval Jewish text that is not really a historical source for comments on, say, Genesis or Exodus, which is how that source is being used. I'm actually not even sure what Book of Yashar he's referring to, but either case, whether it's a forgery or a medieval creative midrashic, that's the technical term, body of material, it's not like, hey, if you want to understand what Genesis is saying, read the Book of Yashar, it'll explain it to you. No, it's itself a creative piece of interpretation because it's dealing with the same problems we're all dealing with when we read Genesis or Exodus or other books of the Hebrew Bible. He also refers to the book of Jubilees, and this is the book that was written probably around 150 BCE. It is actually an amazing book to study if you're interested in Judaism and the developments of Judaism before the time of Christ. And it is basically a retelling of parts of the Bible, of Genesis and Exodus. A retelling means you sort of tell it again, but then you tell it with a certain flair, a sort of creative flair. And it's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a very popular book among those individuals who lived at that time. And there where you read, you'll read something like an explanation where Cain got his wife from, and he married his sister named Awan. And I've posted on, where did Cain get his wife from? The Bible doesn't really tell us. It's a weird thing. How do we put the pieces together? And people have pointed to the book of Jubilees saying, that's the answer. It's telling you what it is. No, the book of Jubilees is dealing with the same problem we're dealing with the fact that the Bible it says weird stuff. We have to try to explain it. So the book of Jubilees makes up an answer. I don't chide them for it. I make up answers too. We all make up answers. But it doesn't settle the matter. It doesn't mean now we know that in the logic of the story, Cain married his sister. It doesn't make sense. The last book mentioned is Enoch, or First Enoch, which is a widely read book. It's very prominent again in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's really a compilation of different kinds of material brought under one cover, First Enoch. It's cited in the book of Jude, which is very interesting, which tells us something about, I think this is the real importance for many Christians, it tells us something about the canonical fluidity of the Jewish tradition around that time, that a book like Enoch could be understood as, something worth quoting as something authoritative, but it's not in the Christian canon. It was probably written by the 3rd century, so it's pretty old, right? It's not a piece of junk. But again, reading that book, you have to read it for its own sake to understand how are these authors understanding the biblical tradition. It doesn't help us understand the biblical tradition. It's creative, interpretive midrash. And for that sake alone, these books are extremely important if we want to understand developments of Judaism. They are useless, hear me, absolutely useless for historical information about the biblical texts.